Why do chickens go to the gym? To work on their pecs. And where do plugs and extension cords go to do their shopping? The outlet mall. Yes, but yeah, so if you ever see a chicken in the gym, just know they're working on their pecs. We have got a lot of things to cover this morning, so we're going to hop in and jump right into starting off on a story I came across that really kind of resonated and settled in with me. And so we're going to jump into that story, and then we'll do some spiritual analogies along with it as well, if you don't mind. But the year was 1940. The Nazi army, Hitler's army, had been ravishing its way across to Europe, taking over country after country. They had just defeated France and marched in and occupied the country of France. Part of that occupation was they began to take the industry, they began to take the manufacturing, they began to take the companies that were nationalistic, that were French companies, and take and require them to start using their skill and their manufacturing and their products for the furtherance of the Nazi cause. And one of the companies that was overcome was Citroën. And it's a car manufacturer, still is to this day a car manufacturer. If you've ever seen one of those little small dinky European cars, it was probably a Citroën. So they're at this time, their president was a guy named Pierre Jules Boulanger, right? Yeah, sounds like he was a real, hard-working guy, right? He was an engineer, and he was a manufacturer's engineer, worked his way up in the company, was president of the company. And Mr. Porsche, because Mr. Porsche at the time was the premier German manufacturer of the time for automobiles, came to him and said, we're taking over your plant, and you're going to, and these trucks that you build are now going to be used for the German army, for the Nazi army. You still make them, you still spend all the money, you still do all the things, but we're taking them and we're using them for our cause. Well, Mr. Boulanger was a little worried, or maybe I should say Monsieur Boulanger was a little upset about this. Didn't really know what to do, because he knew if he stood up and fought back or said no, I'm not gonna do it, that they would probably just have him pulled out and removed, shot, killed, whatever, and put somebody else in there in his place that's going to do that. So he began to think, how can we influence and affect this in a negative way without getting shot, getting removed, getting whatever for me and my team. So the first thing he did was he secretly and quietly told all of his workers that we're going to go slow. So now all of a sudden, they used to be able to turn out trucks every so many weeks. Well, now it was every so many months. We'll just take a little longer. We'll drag our feet a little bit, if you will. But that wasn't going to be enough. That wasn't going to be enough to make it so that that they would be able to truly impact what the Nazi war machine. And so he pulled his top engineers together. In a secret meeting, they began to talk about what they could do to sabotage their trucks, right? First of all, just time out. Sabotage. I learned this the other day. Sabotage comes from a French word to be sabot, which was wooden shoes that the lower class would wear. They were kind of clogs, right? And what happened was, they say at one point during a strike by French workers at a factory, they all took their clogs, their wooden clogs, and threw them into the machinery so the machinery would break and it wouldn't work. And then they walked out. And that's where they say we got our term sabotage from, was because they threw their sabots into the machinery and sabotaged it. So that one was free. So sabotaging, right? So they were like, how can we sabotage? What can we do? And they began to brainstorm these really intelligent, these really, mindful, unique engineers. Engineering minds are very unique minds, aren't they? Our engineering minds are pretty unique minds, I think. Yeah. Do we know any engineers in the house? Do we know anybody that yeah, from the chat? So they get together and they go, well, we can't change anything that would make it too obvious. Because their mechanics, so the Porsche mechanics were there. They were going through everything, checking to make sure everything was working before it went out. They'd catch if they damaged anything or anything there. And then someone landed on a very ingenious idea. They took the dipstick that shows how much oil's in it and what the normal levels. Anybody ever check their oil? You pull that little tube out. See, you just kind of pull it out like this. And you look at that little spot right there, and it tells, oh, this is low, this is high, this is where it needs to be. Well, what they did was they took that little marker there, and they lowered it just far enough that it would show that the engine was full of oil, but it was actually low of oil. So they'd fire that big beast of a truck up, and it would hum, and it would purr, and it would ride off that assembly line, and they checked all the fluids, and whew, look at that. The washer fluids are full, the transmission fluid is full, the brake fluid is full, and the oil is full in the crankshaft. Look at that. This is great. And they'd ship them off to the front lines. And they'd get out there under load, hauling equipment, hauling personnel, and the heat and the dust and the dirt, and wasn't too long before that truck broke down. I wonder why the truck broke down. Let's take it to the mechanics. So the German mechanics are out there, and they're going all over it, and they're checking the fluid. They're pulling the dipstick out and going, oh, yeah, the oil looks okay. It's not the oil. Oh, what is this? I don't know what. And they'd ship it back to get the engine redone, but they would end up blowing the engines out of multitudes. And it would slow down the advancement of the army. It would allow the Allied forces to get into place. It was just enough to frustrate and mess up the war movement, right? All because they had just taken and lowered the mark for full, ever so slightly, just less than tenths and hundredths of an inches on the dipstick meant quarts, or we're in France, so liters of oil in this big, huge honking truck, and it would end up wearing down that engine, and it would finish up and die. Pretty ingenious, right? So when they did that, and Germany never found out. They didn't figure it out. I think, too, part of their perception was probably, German engineering is so much better than French engineering. These horrible French trucks, right? But they never stopped to think, I wonder how much oil is in it. Because they'd pull the dipstick out, and it looked full. It looked fine. Well, today I want to speak to you and preach to you a little bit on the subject of don't trust your dipstick. In Luke chapter 18, verses 9 through 14, Jesus tells a parable. And we'll go turn there again, Luke 18, 9 through 14. And in this parable, there's two people in it. There's Jesus, and he's talking about and he's talking about a Pharisee, and he's talking about a publican. And we'll read that right now. It says, and he spake this parable unto certain which trusted in themselves that they were righteous and despised others. Two men went into the temple to pray, one a Pharisee, one a publican. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself, Oh, God, I thank you that I am not as other men are, that I'm not an extortioner, that I'm not unjust, that I'm not an adulterer, or I'm not even as this publican over here. I fast twice in a week. I give tithes of all that I possess. And the publican was standing afar off over in the corner. He wouldn't even lift his eyes up to heaven. And hit himself on the breast, saying, God, be merciful unto me, a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone that exalteth himself shall be abased, and he that humbleth himself shall be exalted. So again, we're talking about not trusting your dipstick. The Pharisee was highly revered and had a high social standing within the Jewish community. They enjoyed immense respect. They were the spiritual and moral guardians of the law, of what was the community standards. They were devout. They were patriotic. They defended the Jewish identity. They resisted the Roman culture and the Roman influence, and they lived their lives in strict discipline. That's why he said, I tithe. You know, they would look to, there's other places you'll find where Jesus talks about them tithing on their herbs. You know, you grow a little plant of oregano, and they're counting the leaves, and they're counting how much is there, and they're plucking off 1/10 of them and bringing them in to give to the priest. They're measuring out their salt. They're measuring out their pepper. They're just every little thing. They're making sure that they line up with the law, that they line up with what they're supposed to be doing. And I want to stop right there and say, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's the purpose and the mindset that you're doing that in. But they anything that was worldly, we would call it now, right? Anything related to the Roman culture, they were against, and they would stand up and they would teach and they would preach against. But now publicans were a lot different than Pharisees, for sure. Publicans were considered traitors. Publicans were tax collectors back then, right? They were seen as greedy, that they were mercenaries for the Romans. They sold out their own nation, their own families, their own friends, just to make themselves rich and to support this foreign, pagan oppressor. The Republicans were at the opposite extreme of the spectrum when it came from Pharisees, right? They were the tax collectors. That's the public perception. Now, historically, the Romans would auction off the ability to take tithes from people. What'd I do? Oh, Republicans instead of... Sorry. No, I'm glad thanks for catching that. We're just going to go tax collectors. The tax collectors were, from a religious perspective, but back to what happened was Rome would say, okay, we've got this, Cannon County. If Rome had come in and taken over Cannon County, they would go and say, here's the deal. We're going to auction off the ability to take taxes. Instead of going to every one of us and saying, you owe us $1, and you owe us $1, and you owe us $2, and you owe us $5. They would just say, "Here's Cannon County. Who wants to buy the privilege to be the tax collector?" And then they would have an auction, and someone would bid, and then Rome would say, "We think we need $1 million from Cannon County," and they would auction it off, and someone would say, "Yep, I got it. I'm going to do it." So they would pay that money to Rome. Then that gave them the right then to go collect whatever taxes they wanted to from everybody else. So why were these tax collectors so despised? Because they went to Rome and said, and they won the contract to collect taxes at a nickel for everybody in town. But then they went around and told everybody else, you got to pay me $1. You got to pay me 20 cents. You got to pay me, and it didn't matter. If he liked you, you might have to pay 10 cents. If he didn't like you, you might have to pay $1. But whatever he said you owed, you owed. And you couldn't fight it with Rome because Rome didn't care. They already got their money, right? So that's the difference if you're picturing this, right? So here's a Jewish person who has now, for the sake of money and prestige with the Roman government, sold out his friends and family. That's how everybody looked at them. And he is walking into church, and there's the Pharisee and there's the tax collector. From a religious standing, right? The Pharisees were the spiritual elite. They were experts in the Mosaic law and in the oral traditions. They knew if you needed to know, hey, how do I line up with things? Go ask a Pharisee, right? Their entire lives were dedicated to achieving ritual purity and precise giving and handling, and strict observance of the Sabbath is another great example that we see in the Bible, right? But the publicans, they were religious outcasts. They worked closely with Gentiles. They handled the evil pagan coins, right? You remember when they asked Jesus one time, should we pay our taxes? And he said, give me a coin. And it had Caesar's picture on it. And he said, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. Give to God what belongs to God. The coins, the money, were imprinted with not things that were that the Jewish culture and people would consider to be holy, but it was things that were pagan, worldly, if you will. And he dealt with that all the time. They were considered ritually unclean. They were banned. They were expelled. They were forbidden from giving testimony in Jewish courts even. So again, the difference between the Pharisee and the tax collector. Pharisees were naturalists who only barely tolerated Roman rule, and only out of necessity, or only out of if it gave them an edge up in something. But spiritually, they resisted it. They longed for that Messiah that would come and overthrow the government, reestablishing a pure Jewish kingdom. But the publicans, the tax collectors, they played along. They joined the game. Their wealth, their protection, their authority did not depend on what they're in their relationship and standing in the religious world, but entirely on them maintaining the status quo of the Roman occupation. Pharisees were middle class to upper class. Some were wealthy, but most were just ordinary tradesmen, just regular Joes like us, that just had a desire to live for God like they think they should live for God, right? Their power came from their moral authority, not from riches and power and authority with the Romans. That's how they influenced, was through their spiritual piety and their spiritual ability to speak to what the word of the Lord said, what the law said. Not money, but the tax collectors were very wealthy, mostly because they were corrupt. They had immense economic leverage over everyday citizens. Because again, you didn't pay me enough, I'm going to take everything you got. I'm going to make up taxes. And then whatever they made up in a tax, they could go to a Roman soldier and say, you know what? Josh didn't pay me what I told him he owed me. Go throw Josh in jail. So that was their relationship and their differences, right? That's who they were as people. So when we talk about looking at these two men standing there praying to God, and the one is, when we look at them, which one's more spiritual? Which one's more godly? Which one's more in tune and in touch with God? Well, of course, the Pharisee is. He understands God's law. He understands what God wants him to do. He understands the expectations that God has for him. And the tax collector is totally living a worldly life. But which one knew what their dipstick had on it. The tax collector did. Because Jesus said, which one of them left church that day justified? Which one left church getting their prayer answered? Which one's the one that had left having a closer relationship with God? The publican that came and said, the Pharisee that came and said, Lord, I am so glad that I listened and I read my Bible every day this week. God, I'm so glad that, I sacrificed and fasted a couple times this week. God, I'm so glad that I have drawn so close to you because, I gave to the letter what I'm supposed to give. I am so thankful that I am living for God. I am so thankful that I am one of your children, and it shows because look at me. Or where the tax collector came in, hid in the corner, and said, I'm not even supposed to be in here. I don't even feel like I deserve to be in your presence. I don't feel like, but I need you to work with me. I need you to forgive me. I need you to change me. I grew up in the 80s. Who all grew up in the 80s around here? Who grew up in church in the 80s around here? In the 1980s, I spent most of my life worried about if I missed the rapture. I mean, there was actually books that came out, 88 reasons why God's coming back in 1988. Well, 89 reasons why he's coming back in 1989. It was all that. There were times where I would come home from school as a middle schooler, junior higher. I'd come home from school and nobody's at home. Well, that wasn't normal. I'm a, child of the 80s. I was a latchkey kid, right? But if I got off at 3 and they're supposed to be home at 4 and it was 4:30 and no one was home, and it was 5 o'clock and no one was home, and it was 5:30 and no one was home, I'm starting to get a little nervous. I'm starting to check myself. Did I miss it? I'm picking up the phone and calling Grandma, because if Grandma answers, I'm okay. But if Grandma doesn't answer, then and then, you get a little more nervous. You start praying a little bit more. You start, I think it was Mark Lowry that talks about, you immediately start fasting and praying, just right there when Mama gets mad at you. But there was that fear. And I'd check okay, I'd start praying and I'd start praying and speaking in tongues. And I think, okay, am I all right then? Is it okay? And it wasn't like I was backslid. I was 12. Yeah, but I was just really worried that I had missed it. And then they come home and there was an accident or there was traffic or we stopped by the grocery store or whatever it might have been, right? The reason why they were 45 minutes late and I had church already in the house. But I would check myself. I would pull out my dipstick and I'd go, okay, how do I measure up? How am I doing with this? Am I okay? It's full. I'm okay. I'm all right. I think. Hopefully. I don't know. Because I was comparing myself to what I thought those standards and those requirements were that I need to live. But you know who I never went to when I was in those situations? Who I ever really felt like I was connected to? Jesus. I was more worried about if Grandma would pick up the phone than if I could feel the presence of God. I had my focus on the wrong thing. I was gauging my relationship with God based on things. Based on, am I giving in the offering? Check. Am I tithing? Check. Ooh, was I here on Tuesday for prayer? I was this week. Look at that. Check. Look, I'm full. But what I don't realize is that I had been marking my dipstick in the wrong place all the way along. Because I was reading my Bible, but was I applying it? I was giving, but was I giving with a joyful heart? I was sacrificing my time to get up and come in prayer, but was it to really spend time with Him and to spend time with others that were and be in his presence. And was it for me? Ooh, I love coming in here and feeling what it feels like in here on a Tuesday morning. But the Lord kind of checked me. I had to pull out the dipstick and take a look and go, you know what? This thing's a little off, because how much time have I spent on Tuesdays in travail for the city, for the families, for each other? When I looked at it, I was like, I'm in good shape. I'm in that section where it says I'm good. I got plenty of oil. But then I started to realize that I was measuring it with the wrong dipstick. I was going with it the wrong way. 2 Corinthians 10 and 12. Turn there right quick. Paul's writing to the Corinthian church, and he says, "For we dare not make ourselves of the number or compare ourselves with someone that commendeth themselves. But they measure themselves by themselves, comparing themselves among themselves. And that isn't wise." Whew, all right. Pull the dipstick out. Okay, I'm looking okay. The other thing we like to do is we like to take our measuring stick and we like to dip it into this person. Okay. They're okay, but I've got more oil than they got. It comes up a little higher on the stick for me than for you. Or, wow, they got a lot. Maybe I need to work on it a little bit more. But if we're comparing ourselves to each other, you know what? I know Brother Samuel's got to walk with God, and I'm doing it just as good as he is. Or, you know what? Maybe I'm doing a little better this week than he is. I heard him struggling a little bit with and I saw him, out doing whatever instead of being in prayer. Or I saw whatever it might be. We start comparing ourselves amongst ourselves and going, okay, yep, my levels check out. It's not as good as I'm doing better than them, and I think they're going to heaven. So if they're going to heaven, then I'm going to heaven. But Paul said we can't compare ourselves to ourselves or to each other. But where our focus has to be, fortunately and unfortunately, is on Jesus. Most of you have things in your walk with God and your relationship with God that you do better than I do. And if I compare myself to your walk with God, I'm either going to get discouraged or I'm going to get prideful. But if I compare my relationship and my walk with God to Jesus, that's where my focus has to be. That is the only way I'm going to know that spiritually I am full of His Spirit. That I take myself and I honestly compare myself to the Word of God. I honestly compare myself to Jesus. And I don't know why I'm on a Mark Lowry kick, but the other thing that I remember him used to saying is, when being one of Jesus' siblings would have always been a really horrible thing to be as a kid, right? Because can you imagine how many times Mary would have said, "Why can't you just be like Jesus?" That's a high bar and a high standard, but we strive for that perfection, right? What do we have to do? We have to keep checking our spiritual oil level. Anybody had one of those cars where you just drove it till it died? Yeah. Typically, when did it die? When you reached in there and you pulled the dipstick out and there wasn't anything on it. And you're like, yeah, when's the last time I changed the oil? When's the last time I checked this? Yeah, kind of like, when's the last time did you floss? Usually you tell the dentist, well, I think the last time was when you did it. When's the last time you check your oil? When's the last time you did it? Usually the time that you check it is when something's not sounding right. Ooh, there's a knock. Why am I over here on the side of the road? Yeah, maybe I should have checked the oil before I started. But if you're checking your oil and you've moved the bar on your dipstick, doesn't matter if it says it's full or not. You're going to run short, and you're going to run out, and you're going to stall. You know, Matthew 7, we'll go there right quick. Matthew 7 and verse 21. Jesus is talking to them, and he says, "Not everyone that says unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven." In verse 22. "Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name? And in thy name have cast out devils? And in thy name done many wonderful works? And then I will profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of iniquity." The first part of this, that's those people are looking at their dipstick going, "Look at that. I cast out demons." Full. "Look at that. I did all these wonderful, amazing miracles and things for you, God. Look at that, God. I lived for you. I did all those things." And I looked at it and oh, yeah, there's a quart, there's a quart, there's a quart. Look at that. I am right on the full line. I should be fine when I see Jesus. And then we get to that judgment day and he goes, "Who are you?" I was measuring the wrong thing with my dipstick. I was measuring the wrong thing and not realizing that what he wants from us is not for us just to read our Bible every day, and not for us just to fast on a regular basis, not for us just to pray every day. All those things are great, and all those things are that first step. But what all those things are supposed to do are to lead us to a relationship with him. It's the relationship that he's hungry for. It's the relationship that he's looking for. It's the relationship that keeps us full. It's his relationship that we should be measuring it up against. And if we have the relationship with him, then all of a sudden giving becomes more joyful. When we have a relationship with him, that hunger and that desire to dig into his word is there. When we have that relationship with him, falling on our knees and finding our prayer closet and just singing and having a good time and praying and talking with him doesn't become a time of prayer, but it becomes an attitude of prayer, a relationship of prayer. There are days where Lindsay and I will not say anything to each other probably a half the day long. I'm in my little space working, she's in her little space working, and there's times that, and you get to the end of the day and you go, wow, I really missed you today. We're 20 feet from each other most of the day, but we don't have that connection. Or we talk about things, but it's, what are you going to do? Who's taking the dog out? What you doing here? What you doing there? Hey, can you run get this? Can you do that? And then we have a time where we can sit down at the end of the day and we really have time together where we talk about things. We enjoy each other's company. We just laugh. We just, it could be while we're making dinner, doing those things. Our relationship with God can be that way, where we're just so busy and so wrapped up in things that we just talk business with him, but we don't have a relationship with him. And I want to encourage you today to not look at everybody else and not look at yourself even, but look to him. The Bible says he is the author and the finisher of our faith. And if we will focus on our relationship with him, then we pull out our gauge and we look at it and go, whew, I've got joy unspeakable and full of glory. Whew, look at that. I am filled to the brim. I said one time I'm drinking from the saucer because my cup is running over, right? And what gets you to that point? Relationship, relationship, relationship. If you feel like you keep losing momentum, if you feel like every time you turn around, you're broke down on the side of the road, spiritually, feel like you're not getting your victories. You're not getting the encouragement you need. You're not making that next step and that next step. You're not wading out into the deeper areas of the water, because it seems like about the time you get to where you think you're going to go with God, you end up stuck on the side of the road. But I don't understand, God. I'm reading the Word. I don't understand, God. I'm praying. I don't understand. I'm fasting. I don't understand. I'm coming to church. I don't understand. I'm talking to people about you. I don't understand. I'm doing all of these things. But yet, when I pull out my dipstick and I measure, I'm doing all the things. I should be full. I should be okay. We can't trust our dipstick. I encourage you today to come now. Let's all stand. And ask God to really evaluate how full you are. And ask Him to help us find that deeper, more meaningful, more powerful, anointed relationship and presence with Him. Not because anybody else is doing it, not because it's the standard, it's the norm, it's not because what we hear, what we're supposed to do, what we know we do, what the Word of God says we do, but to do it because we want to be full of His Spirit. That we don't need to worry about what our level is, but that we will be running and working and striving to hear, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." That He will know who we are and know what we've done because we've had and built a close relationship with Him. Let's all come to the altar right now. Pray in the spot where you're at. There's nothing other than being together with one another and feeling and bonding over it with His Spirit. And stepping out and taking that step of faith and showing Him that you are serious about wanting to have a better relationship with Him. But you can have the same thing where you're sitting. We enjoy you and ask to come to the altar, and there's always, if you feel it, but God is not limited at all, right? More importantly, it's not about stepping out, but it's about finding a spot for Him and really having that conversation and talking to Him about how you can become more alive in Jesus Christ. How that you can check and make sure that your dipstick is not marked in the wrong spot, but that you are looking and truly finding a fulfilling and full life in Him. Let's all just pray for a little while.
as he was finishing up, and we started to pray, a thought crossed my mind from the Bible. And that was just very simple, that we often do check ourselves, measure ourselves among ourselves. But the psalmist said it like this: search me, O God. You search me. And I want you to know my heart. And I want you to know my thoughts. Search me. You know my heart. You know my thoughts. And then it says, and see if there be any wicked way in me. Check me, God. Run me through the mill. Look at me. Have you ever asked the Lord, take your eyes of fire and pierce into my soul and my spirit and see who I really am inside? If there's anything that doesn't need to be there, God, bring it to my mind and help me to cleanse that out of me. Because it's not my ways that's going to get me to heaven. Only your way is going to do that. And the question the Lord put on my spirit this morning, actually a couple of days ago, but come back to me this morning, was, is my relationship with God, am I closer in relationship today than I was a year ago? Am I closer today than I was 6 months ago? Do I have a better relationship with God this week than I had last week? Am I moving forward, or am I staying put? It's one thing again to know. It's another thing to apply. It was very good this morning, Kirk. This couple of weeks ago at camp meeting, several of you were present for that, and I do want to say thank you for coming and being a part of that service. Most of you knew what was going on even before I did, and that's all good. But they honored my wife and I at camp meeting for the time we had served on Tennessee North American Missions. And I was very humbled by all of it. I did good to put Brother to preach on the screen. And that was just cruel. That was mean. But I got to thinking after that. Got a lot of people give me thanks and accolades and whatever afterwards. We got cards and things. And also was very kind. But beyond all that, I got to thinking. Talking about checking the dipstick. And I even put it in my notes here so I'd never forget it. All that I have done for the Lord and his kingdom throughout my life, when I pile it all up and I lay it at his feet at the foot of the cross, I am ashamed of how small it really is compared to what he has done just for me, not to mention everybody else. It's never going to be about me. It's never going to be about you. There's only one in the audience, and we come together, and he's the only one worthy to pull the dipstick and to say, okay, you're good. Or maybe, I found this and you need to add a little bit here or something. He's the only one worthy. So for the next 2 minutes, would you just ask the Lord to double check us? Double check you. God, come right now and look at me, God. Talk to him, church. You can come right now and look at me. Search me, oh God. Know who I am inside. God, evaluate the good. Evaluate the things I struggle with. Evaluate my weaknesses and my strengths, oh Lord. And God, fix me. Help me to fix myself. Order my footsteps, God, that I might be pleasing to your sight. That God, I might be what you want me to be and not what I want me to be. I need you to heal me, God. I need you to deliver my soul from things that tries to keep it captured and bound up. God, I need you. I'm like the Apostle Paul said. I'm just a wretched man. And I need you to deliver me from this body of death. Work inside of me right now, God. Change me from the inside out. Make me, God, in your image and after your likeness. Create in me a clean heart, oh God. Renew within me that right spirit. Fix me, God. For I am but flesh and bone. I am but humanity. But I'm also a child of the King. I'm also loved by El Shaddai. I'm loved by the Almighty. And for that, I'm so grateful. That your eyes of fire are also eyes of mercy and compassion. Work on me, oh God. Work on me, oh God. Pull the thing that you need to out of my life and evaluate things within me, God. That I might be pleasing to you, Lord. That you might be able to say one day, well done, thou good and faithful servant. I want to give myself away. I want to leave everything I have on the altar. I want to abandon it all for the sake of your call, God. For I'm not my own. I've been bought with a price. I am yours. I am yours. I belong to you. My strengths are yours. My weaknesses are yours. My significant success and failures, they all belong to you, God, for I am yours. I am yours. My relationships, this fleshly body, this mind, heart, my soul, my spirit, it's all yours, God. It's all yours. It's all yours. It's all yours. I encourage us as a church body to seek the face of God. Because when we're seeking his face, we're seeking the direction he's going. We're seeking the things he sees. We're seeking the things that he hears. We're seeking that. So seek the face of God. Seeking his nature, his personality, who he is. And everything else will come with it. Sometimes we want the power. But how about the presence? You can have the power sometimes without the presence. But you can't have the presence without the power. I want all that he has for this church. Amen. I know we're enjoying the open seating, extra seating during summertime, but summer will be over soon. Okay? And we'll stop our vacations and we'll stop all of our stuff. We'll get back to the normal lives, okay? So enjoy the rest of summer where you have a whole row to yourself maybe, but just don't stretch out while preaching and lay down, okay? Just don't get that comfortable in the presence of the Lord, all right? But seriously, as you go through this summer and you're enjoying the sweat and the stickiness, there's one thing nice about being bald. My hair never gets messed up by sweat. But nothing else stops it either. It's a beautiful thing. It's just, it looks like I'm crying sometimes and just tears are flowing. Actually, it's coming off the top of my head. It's dripping off my eyelashes. It's just wonderful. Only if you're blessed to be bald do you understand the beauty of that. But as you're going through all of that, make sure we're making time every day for our personal relationship with him to get closer to him. Not just to go through a checklist, but to get closer to him. Amen? Tell your neighbor, you need to be closer to God. Come talk to him. You need to be closer to God next week than you are today. You only got 1 week to make this happen now. Only 1 week to get a little closer. Unless the Lord comes, then we'll all be really close, hopefully. Amen? I love you, church. God bless you. You're dismissed. Have a wonderful Sunday afternoon in the presence of the Lord.